During the late 19th century, Tucson began to grow larger, and the University of Arizona was founded in 1885. This 1889 image of the university's original building, now known as Old Main, shows Sentinel Peak to the west. After an Arizona football victory over Pomona College in November 1914, Albert Condron, a member of the football team and a civil engineering student, suggested to one of his professors that an A be constructed on the side of Sentinel Peak. Over the course of the next year, students cleared a portion of land at the top of the peak of cactus and other plants. Trenches were dug in the outline of the letter A, and rock was hauled to the site by horses to create the giant monument. The A, which measures 70 feet wide and 160 feet tall, was finally whitewashed on March 4, 1916, and soon became an iconic landmark of the city and the university. Sentinel Peak was thereafter referred to as A Mountain, and the nickname grew in popularity. During the early 20th century, Sentinel Peak was used as a quarry for its black basalt rock. A large crater-like impression on the north side of the peak is what remains of this quarry today. Many of the basalt rock taken from this location was used as foundation for many of the old homes in West Side neighborhoods. Basalt rock was also commonly used for walls around properties that can still be seen today, the most notable being the basalt rock wall that surrounds the west side of the University of Arizona's campus. The old turtle pond near Park Avenue also utilizes the same basalt rock. In the late 1920s, businessmen wanted to quarry the entirety of Sentinel Peak. Tucson citizens had come to use the site as a residential park, and the gigantic A had become a beloved symbol, however, and public protest helped to save A Mountain from its near destruction. The painting of A Mountain has become a tradition for the University of Arizona, and every year freshmen go up the peak to give a fresh coat of paint to the A. Although it has almost always been white, the A has also been painted other colors at times. Starting in the 1990s, the A has sometimes been painted green for St. Patrick's Day. After the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, the A was painted red, white, and blue in an act of patriotism, also doubling as the university's colors. The red, white, and blue pattern has been repeated several times since. In 2003, after the United States invasion of Iraq, the A was painted black by a group called People Against Imperialism to protest the war. The A was returned to its normal colors soon thereafter, and the mayor of Tucson stated he no longer wanted the letter to be used as a canvas for political statements. The University of Arizona's rival, Arizona State University in Tempe, has an A Mountain of their own on Tempe Butte near the school's football stadium. As part of the rivalry during the week of the UA-ASU football game every fall, fans and students try to paint the A of the opposing school with their own colors. Today's Sentinel Peak is maintained as a public park. A road travels to the top where visitors can exit their vehicles at the large A and gaze out over the city of Tucson. A historical marker describes the story of the peak, while another marker, placed by the Daughters of the American Revolution, highlights the peak's Spanish colonial past as a lookout against Apache attacks. A small gazebo used for gatherings and occasional weddings is located on the west side of the mountain, while picnic tables and a grill are nearby. Short hiking trails allow visitors to climb to the top of the peak above the A and the roadway below. Every July 4th, fireworks are fired from the mountain in a celebration of American Independence Day. Sentinel Peak has been an important icon of Tucson for over 1,000 years, providing the city its name when Native Americans first settled at its base. The peak remains a popular location to gaze upon the city at sunset.
Just a few more people on their way in. If you guys are noticing a bit of a funky smell in here, that's because a lot of animals use this cave as a bathroom. That's the reason you don't want to be touching things in here. The handrails are the only things we are legally allowed to sanitize. Is everybody inside? Awesome! Welcome to the entry room. It's super creatively named. We're going to hang out in here for a couple minutes to let our eyes adjust to the new light level, and I'm going to tell you about the very first humans to discover this cave. Those were the Hohokam Native Americans. They stayed in here from around 900 to 1450 AD, and we know that they were here because they left a lot of artifacts around this room, most of which were later stolen, as well as a big smoke stain on the ceiling. The Hohokam used this cave for ceremonies, storage, and as a stop on their migrations, but they didn't really explore very much. In fact, they almost never went past where I'm standing right now, and that is for two reasons. One, caves were very sacred to them. They believed that humans, along with all other living creatures, came out of the earth like crystals, so caves, known for their crystals, were seen kind of as a portal to the underworld. Not a great place to be running around and getting some karma. The second reason was a bit more practical. That's the fact that past this point, there is no natural light in the cave. It would have been completely dark in here. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about that today. We have all these lovely electric lights throughout the door. We'll be able to see perfectly fine. Speaking of the dark, we do have some animals in here who love the dark. Our bats. I want you to raise your hand real quick if you're a little bit nervous about the bats in the cave today. Alright, I want everybody to hold up your thumb like you're giving me a thumbs up. That's how big they are. Our bats are super tiny. They can't hurt you. They're basically flying chicken nuggets. Most of our bats have actually migrated to Mexico for the winter, but we still do have a few hanging out in the cave today, so if you see one flying around later, don't panic. They're really good navigators. So unless you scream and flail your arms, they're not going to run into you. We've also got some Coatamundis in this cave. You guys know what those are? They're kind of what you would get if you mixed a badger and a raccoon, stuck a lemur tail on the end. They're adorable. I love them. But they get all their behavior from the raccoon side of the family, which means that they get into a lot of trouble. They get into our trash cans, they steal people's food, they have even broken into our margarita machines multiple times. They had a lot of fun. Alright. Now, in just a second, we're going to be going down that hallway there, and the ceiling is going to be getting a bit low. So if you're taller than me, I recommend that you watch your head, stick to the middle of the pathway. We've also got a couple of drop-offs on either side, which means if you drop something down there, as much as I would love the excuse to climb around, I'm not allowed to, so I cannot get it back for you. All right. Here we go. Go. Alrighty, whoever is the last in line, once you are able to see this room, I need you to wave at me so I know everybody's here. You're okay. Alright, almost there. Alright. Perfect. Welcome to the Crystal Forest. Named for all of these formations up here. Looks kind of like an upside down pine tree forest. Any of you guys know what these are called?
Stalactites.
Stalactites, exactly. They're formed when water drips down through the mountain and deposits minerals on the ceiling. They grow kind of the same way that icicles do, except of course way slower. When water drips down off of these stalactites and lands on the ground, what do we get?
Stalagmites.
Stalagmites. If you have trouble remembering the difference, stalactites hang tightly to the ceiling, while stalagmites are on the ground, so if you aren't careful, you might trip over one. When a stalactite and a stalagmite in the middle, we get a column. Very fancy name compared to the other two. We've also got some flowstone and dripstone. The flowstone is the ripply stuff on top, and the dripstone is the white drippy stuff underneath. Together, it looks kind of like melty ice cream. Yummy! All of this stuff is made of calcite crystal. You might be thinking, it doesn't really look like crystal. Everything in here is all tan and dusty. That is because of our bats. They fly around outside at night, gathering up dust and pollen from the outside world, and then they come back in here, spreading that dust, pollen, and a whole bunch of something else all over the cave. Our bats did not get the memo that there is no bathroom in here. Pretty much every surface of this cave is covered in millions of years worth of bat guano. Not something you want to be touching with your bare hands. We do sanitize the handrails, although I'm going to be honest, not as often as we should, so please get some hand sanitizer when you leave. This is what the calcite crystal looks like underneath. We call this guy here Old Baldy. He's got a pretty sweet forehead going on there. Now, Old Baldy looks pretty cool, but he's actually irreversibly damaged. If I can get the light on there. People have been rubbing their hands all over his head for over 100 years, stripping away that protective coating of dust, pollen, and bat poo, and replacing it with yucky human hand oils. Caves need water to grow. Oil and water do not mix. So if water ever returns to this cave, drips down off of that stalactite up there and lands on Old Baldy's head, it is just going to roll right off. He is never going to grow again. This is due to cave vandalism and a guy named Solomon Lick. Please keep that name in mind. We're talking a lot of trash about him today. Mr. Solomon Lick discovered this cave on accident in 1878. He was searching for some lost cattle in the area when he found a 2.5-foot stinky mystery hole in the ground. So, of course, he jumped right in, as we all would. That was when he discovered this amazing cave. Being a businessman, Solomon took one look around and decided to use it as a gimmick for his hotel nearby. He'd basically tell everybody, hey, I've got this awesome hotel you should visit. If you stay a night, I'll take you to this really cool cave that I don't own. And you can do whatever you want inside. Whatever you want included stealing most of the Hohokam artifacts from the entry room, as well as parts of the cave itself. If you look around, you can see that most of our stalactites are flat on the ends. That's not natural, they don't just randomly fall off. Solomon would encourage his tour guests to climb up these rocks and snap them off, lasso them off, saw them off. They would even bring rifles in to shoot them off. Not the greatest idea inside of a cave. I guess it worked though, because they kept doing it. All of these broken stalactite ends were put to uses such as decorations, doorstops, chalk, and my personal favorite, they would be eaten. Calcite crystal is made of calcium carbonate. That is the same ingredient you can find in Tums. You would eat some bat poop flavored Tums to cure your heartburn. There's 1,800 of medicine for you. Now we are about to go down a super teeny tiny staircase. It's only about 3 steps, but for some reason more people trip there than anywhere else. So please use the handrail on the left, not the shiny stalagmites on the right.
This one. You want to touch it?
What's up, Dalton?
What's up, Julia? How are you? It's not our group. Can you bring it back with you guys?
Only 3?
Yeah. I know. C's get degrees.
Let's see.
Hi, guys.
I believe we can fit a couple more people on here. You'll have to squeeze in together, guys. Pretend like you like each other. I promise the next room is way bigger.
Thank you.
Whoever is the last in line, wave at me once you pass by old Baldy. Oh, there we go. Alright, almost there. A couple of you guys are going to have to double up on the stairs there. Perfect.
All right, my group, let's squeeze to the right.
Alright, awesome. So there's 2 reasons we're hanging out over here. One, got a pretty awesome view back there. We call it the Kingdom of the Elves. It's an awesome picture opportunity once you pass by. But the real reason we're stopping is so that I can warn you about a very big cave friend of mine. This guy's name is Fang. He is the largest stalactite in our cave. He weighs 5,000 pounds. That is about equal to a Ford F-150 or a 4-year-old elephant dangling above my head right now. Despite Fang's huge size, people constantly miss him, which is how he gets his name. If you happen to be over 5'7" and not paying enough attention, Fang here might take a bite right out of your forehead and leave you with a souvenir you did not particularly want. If you do end up hitting your head on Fang as you walk by, you may be tempted to hide it. I did just warn you that would be pretty embarrassing, but we're all gonna know. That's because Fang here is a cave bell. So if I hear that, I know we got one of you. You guys see those videos where people take the fancy crystal bowls and rub the rims to make cool noises? It's the same principle. Crystals reverberate sounds really well, and since Fang here is a really big chunk of pure calcite crystal, he makes some pretty awesome noises when you hit him. Depending on the size, shape, and location in the cave, we get different sounds from different stalactites. I'll show you all the cave bells that I know of. If you're curious about whether or not one of them is going to make a sound, please ask me. I'll test it out for you using this antimicrobial rubber spatula. Please do not go around punching random rocks in the cave. It's bad for the cave. It is worse for your hands. Now we're about to go down this little hallway here. It is going to be getting a bit tight for just a moment, so please watch your head and shoulders. Don't hit your head. If you do, don't sue me. Here we go. We should start a band. Make some rock music. Alright, perfect. This here is the drapery room, named for this big old formation right up here. Looks kind of like curtains or draperies. This is more of that dripstone you saw earlier in the crystal forest. The singular of it is called cave bacon. It does look like bacon, and it's technically edible, although I wouldn't recommend you try taking a bite out of it.
What's up?
Now, I already told you guys all about Mr. Solomon Lick with all of his destruction tours, but that's enough negativity. I'm going to tell you about Frank Schmidt, the guy who saved our cave. He came in here in 1918, and he did not like the destruction he was seeing, so he saved up a whole bunch of money, and in 1922 he bought this cave so that Solomon could never get inside again. Now, the only way to get into the cave was to take one of Frank's tours. You would pay him 25 cents, he would give you a rope and a candle, and you would climb around in here for hours at a time while he made sure you didn't try taking home any illegal souvenirs. Keep in mind that is before all these lovely floors, railings, and lights were put in, so you would have been crawling over boulders like that in the pitch dark. Frank also did not have a phone system in here, so if you decided that you were kind of tired and wanted to go home early, he would just sort of look at you and say, okay, I'm going to keep going. You've got two choices. You can come with me, or you just go back the way you came. Hope I don't get lost. Bye! Safety standards were not quite the same. Despite this, his tours were doing really well. People loved this cave. But in 1929, the Great Depression hit, and suddenly nobody could afford it anymore. Frank really needed a solution. Because nobody could afford his tours anymore, that solution came in the form of the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. This was a bunch of young men aged 18 through 24 getting jobs around America. They built infrastructure like highways, fixed up national and state parks, among many other things. Any of you guys been to Mount Lemon before? Mm-hmm. They built the road up there. Frank wanted them to come in here and make this cave more accessible to the public. There was just one little problem though. He owned this cave privately, and they only did national and state parks. So Frank ended up having to give this entire cave to the state of Arizona for free, under 3 conditions. 1, that the CCC would come in immediately to put in all these floors and railings. 2, that while they were at it, they would also build a nice house up at the surface. Up until then, Frank and his family had been living in a tent for 10 years. It was not fun. The final condition was that Frank and his family would remain the curators and tour guides of this cave for as long as they were able to. Frank ended up giving tours until he was 84 years old. He passed away just a year later in 1957. That's why we love him so much. He dedicated his entire life to this cave. Now, back to the CCC. They were in here from 1934 to 1938, and they used to get lost a lot. They would draw arrows on the walls to figure out where they were going and where they'd been, but sometimes these guys had nothing better to do than to draw prank arrows facing the wrong way to get each other lost. So if you wander around this cave for long enough, chances are you're going to end up right here in this room. That is because there are 6 entrances. So if you want to find your way out of this cave, you have to ask the cave witch which way to go. Over here is her scraggly hair, her eye, her wart, her long witchy nose, and she only has one snagly tooth in her mouth, which happens if you eat limestone cookies all day. Now, our cave witch, she looks kind of mean and scary, but she's actually a very nice witch, because if you ask her for directions, that long witchy nose is going to point you that way, out of the cave. Great job to whoever guessed that. And now, this cave has never been fully explored. We've mapped out about 39.4 miles of it, but the last official mapping expedition was 1917. So it's a little bit out of date. One of the tour guides actually just discovered a new room here.
Wow.
Yep.
Like you don't have steps going down there yet.
Yeah, well, that's like 4 feet deep. I know it looks like a deep, dark, bottomless pit from here, but it's not. All right, are we all here? Yeah. Okay, can you pass my UV light to the front, please? Thank you very much. All right, guys, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this cave was formed. Colossal Cave is a karst cave, which basically means it was formed by water in limestone a really long time ago. Back when the Rincon Mountains were forming, a fault line opened up and a bunch of water started seeping through. This water picked up some carbonic acid, same stuff that makes soda fizzy, as well as sulfuric acid from the Rincon volcano. This acidic water then found a huge slab of limestone. Most limestone is very soft and easily dissolvable, so the water just ate right through it. Some of it, though, was this escabrosa limestone you guys can see all around you right now. It's much denser, so the water left it behind, forming what we call solution tunnels. We also call them Swiss cheese. Geologists are hungry people. They like naming formations after food. All right, there's your geology crash course for the day. In just a second, you're going to see our most famous piece of Swiss cheese on the right, the bottomless pit. It is not actually bottomless. It goes down about 60 feet. If you drop something down there, it is not coming back out. That includes your phone, as well as your dignity. Here we go. Dun, dun, dun. Alrighty, now in just a moment, we're going to be going through the Hall of Time. On your left, you're going to see a couple of display cases with some of the Hall of artifacts that were not stolen. The first one is a mano matata used to grind seeds, grains, and berries for food. The second is a mortar mixing the pestle used to grind pigments for pottery. We're pretty sure Solomon didn't take these two because he thought they were normal rocks. Alright, we can go down the right here. Here's that mano matata. And there is the mortar. you, I can make this turn into something completely different. I'll pass it back so everybody gets a try. Once in a lifetime opportunity to write your name on a cave wall without getting in trouble. You gotta hold it pretty close. There you go.
Oh, here you go.
It glows because of phosphorescence. I'm gonna be honest, I barely passed chemistry. I do not know how it works. Alright, all over the left wall here, we got more cool crystals. Got some dolomite right here.
Be close.
And then on this side, got a bunch of
It's cool. Honey.
I've been touching a lot of that. Last year, a guy got married up there dressed in a full bat suit.
Oh my
I do
God.
not mean like Batman. I heard his marriage didn't work out. We are currently in the movies and popcorn room. Thank you. There have been 27 movies filmed inside of this cave. Some of them were documentaries. Most of them were low-budget horror movies back before CGI was really a thing. Unfortunately, none of them were Indiana Jones. Alright. Now, one of the better things filmed in this cave was actually by Sesame Street, called Sesame Goes West. In this movie, Big Bird and Cookie Monster were searching for the lost bird seed and cookie treasure in the cave. They came right here into this room, where Big Bird discovered his long-lost ancestor, the cave T-Rex. Over here is his eye, his mean brow, his long snout, and his snarly mouth. Big Bird saw this cave T-Rex, and he thought it was a real T-Rex, so being a giant chicken, he turned right around and ran straight through that wall. That is a keyhole formation. It's completely natural. No birds or caves were harmed in the making of this movie. And he did find the treasure on the other side, so it all worked out in the end. Alright, now in just a second, we're going to be going down that hallway, going to see some more display cases. The first one has a bunch of stuff used by bandits who were using our cave as a hideout. The second has a bunch of the equipment Frank used on his very first tours. And the last one has the tools used by the CCC while they were down here. I'll explain each one when we get there. Alright, now up here we got all of Frank's equipment. Got that rolling pin he would give you. Some corned beef you would get for lunch. It was delicious. And then this here is a carbide lantern. It is basically a blowtorch that you strap to your face. What could possibly go wrong? Fortunately, we don't use those anymore. I'm going to wait a second for a couple people to catch up before we continue. Okay, now we're going to keep going. Up here, we got all the tools used by the CCC. You got a wheelbarrow, shovel, and a pickaxe, some drill bits, and a hammer. The wheelbarrow looks pretty normal, but there was any rubber on the wheel. Rubber was super expensive during the Great Depression because they had to import it from other countries. So instead, they just made the wheel out of solid cast iron. You weren't going to get any flat tires, but the wheel by itself weighed 60 pounds. When the wheelbarrow was full, it could be up to 300 pounds. You had to be pretty comfortable in the CCC, hauling 300 pounds of rock at a time, being paid $1 a day, and being fed beans, and beans for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The tunnels are natural. The CCC only had to widen a couple of them, but they only modified about 2% of the cave. For the most part, they just added the rocks for the walkways. They didn't really take anything away.
Was there any fear of part of it falling on them, as you know?
I'm sure they were nervous about it. I mean, who wouldn't be? But this cave is actually very stable. There have been thousands of earthquakes since it was formed, and not one of them has damaged any of the formations. Like, the stalactites are not going to fall on your head from an earthquake. We actually did have an earthquake in here a few weeks ago, and nothing in here broke. Yeah?
Has the guano ever been mined to make like gunpowder or something like that?
The guano, yes, for a little while it was mined to make gunpowder, fertilizer, and up until recently, bat guano has been used to make women's makeup. Really gives a whole new meaning to the phrase batting your eyelashes. Alrighty. We made it. Alrighty, guys. Welcome to Frank's living room. Remember how I told you he'd been living in a tent for 10 years? Well, fortunately, he had this lovely 71-degree cave right outside his front door, so of course he used it. Back there is a 30-foot hole in the ceiling with some railings up at the top. That is Frank's shortcut. Keep it in mind, we're going to be up there pretty soon. He used to rappel down that hole with his tour guests and equipment to set up base camp in here. The guy who owned the cave afterwards, Joe, would invite his friends down to play card games, have parties, all sorts of shenanigans. Anyway, this is the original man cave. Now, if you look down, you can see some of the original cave floor. This stuff is called cave ice. It's formed when there's a pool of water in a cave like this. Dust from the calcite crystals falls on top of it and forms a crust. Then the water evaporates, leaving nothing underneath. In some places, it can be a little bit dangerous. That crust can be a couple millimeters or a couple inches thick. The drop underneath could be a few inches or a few dozen feet. There are drops of up to 40 feet recorded in this very cave. Don't worry, not under that part. We did check. Since it's made of pure calcite crystal like the rest of our formations, I can do this. Alright, I'm going to write a D for Daniela for getting us down the stairs safely. So, does anybody in here play a musical instrument? What do you play?
The piano.
Cool. Anybody else? No. Well, I play the drums. Specifically one drum, the cave bass. I showed you all those cave bells earlier. They're nice and high-pitched because they're made of pure calcite crystal like this one. But the cave bass is pure limestone, which almost never makes any sounds. That's why this one is so unique, and also my favorite one in the entire cave. Alright, now we're about to go down this teeny tiny staircase. It looks super small and unimportant, but once you reach the bottom, you're gonna be 72 feet underground. This is the deepest we'll be in the cave today. Maybe a little victory dance once you get here. You could say that we have just hit rock bottom. Precious opportunity. Look at this. Okay. In keeping with the cathedral theme, we've got the 4 praying nuns over here. Some of them look like nuns. Some of them honestly look kind of like potatoes. And then up here we've got the cave gargoyle. Here's his head, his wing, and his little gargoyle feet. But once again, the real reason we're stopping here is so that I can warn you about a very big cave friend of mine. This guy's name is Bone Crusher. He has broken 3 people's noses before. 2 of them were tour guides. If we can do it, so can you. Please watch out as you walk by. Do not be number 4. Now, in just a minute, we are going to be going up a very tall and steep staircase. About halfway up is a large boulder overhanging the railing on the right. I have hit my head on that thing countless times. It's not fun. Don't be like me. Up at the top, there's going to be an old construction shaft. I'll tell you guys more about it in a few minutes, but if you want to take pictures of it, take them at the top of the staircase. You will not get another opportunity. Alright, don't forget about Bone Crusher here. Watch out for his big brother on the right, Shoulder Smasher. As well as his little baby cousin on the left, Toe Tripper. Okay, now we're all here. So did everybody see that old construction shaft up there? That was used by the CCC to bring down tools and materials for all of these walkways and railings. It was built in the 30s, made out of real wood. So right now it is really full of termites. Probably not a good idea to climb on it. You can actually see the top of it when you leave the cave today. As you exit the parking lot, if you look to your left, you'll see what looks like a random roof sitting out in the desert. That's the top of that construction shaft. So if you think about it, we are underneath the parking lot right now. Now, in a moment, we're going to reach another staircase. This one going down. We call it El Diablo staircase because we're pretty sure he's the guy who built it. It sucks. The best way to go down is to sidestep and use the handrail. I'll demonstrate once we get there, but it's in a really small room, so only like the first 3 people are going to be able to see me. So just pay attention to what the person in front of you is doing. Copy them. Unless they're falling, then don't copy that. Alright, here we go. Up here we've got the silent waterfall. It's a great picture opportunity. Created by the real waterfall back when water was actually flowing.
Let me see that again.
Each waterfall was hundreds of years before. You may be noticing a bit of a funky smell up here. That's because last week a skunk got in here and decided to make sure that everybody would know about it forever. I'm gonna let you know this is the last stop on our tour today. Can you guys believe we've been down here for almost an hour? Time flies when you're in a cave. Alright, the answer to what's at the bottom of this deep dark pit of doom is Frank's living room. We were just down there. We are currently standing on top of Frank's shortcut. He used to bring his tour guests down that hallway. They would tie a rope around this stalagmite, set down a burning candle on this one, totally not a fire hazard, and rappel all the way down to the bottom. That was just his tour guests. His kids, on the other hand, were usually expected to free climb. No ropes for them. Dad of the year, huh? From what I've heard, it's actually pretty easy to get down there, but still, Frank's lucky CPS wasn't a thing at the time. Now, if you look at this big formation with the UV light, you can see a bunch of bright blue splashes everywhere. That's all the wax from the candles Frank used to set down on here. All this brownish stuff everywhere, that is mostly bat poop. That's why I don't let you guys touch things in here. I know some of you were. You know who you are. Please get some hand sanitizer when you leave. All the blue dust everywhere, that is human dust. It's everywhere in the cave, and it's all over us. It's basically pocket lint. Alright, I'm going to show you a couple of cave bells real quick before we go. Excuse me. Here we go. Got a nice one right here, and over here. But the very best one's right there. Can someone get that for me?
There, this one?
Yeah. I think my spatula ran out of battery.
You're not very musical, kid.
I promise I do that to all my tours.
I was so excited.
So there's 2 reasons I do that. 1, it's fun. 2, I like showing you guys through trial and error how you can tell which ones are going to make the sounds. These 2 are surrounded by other formations, which means that their bases are pure calcite crystal. This one, on the other hand, has a bunch of limestone all around it, which completely deadens any sound it tries to make. Now, on our way out, there will be another cave bell. I'll pass back the spatula so everybody can try. I promise that one's real. If you loved this tour and you're going to write a super positive review, please remember my name is Julia. But if you think my tour stinks or if I tricked you into hitting the wrong cave bell, I lied. I'm actually Sarah. Let's get out of here. And we're almost there. The railing that gets you all the way to the top is the one on the left. I can see daylight! Woo! Just 2 more flights of stairs, guys. We're almost there. Watch your head on the left. Alrighty, welcome back to the land of the living.
I don't blame you guys at all. You guys can just come up and tell me. I'll get you guys an escort out of the cave in probably 5 minutes.
I appreciate it.
All sound
Thank you
good?
very much.
You're welcome.
The reason I say this is just to please not walk off on me.
We're together.
This is a 39.4-mile cave. Much rather you guys not get lost.
That was me.
Right?
That was
So,
100% me. I was like,
Wow.
and then once they're out,
Wasn't that something?
Wow.
Very jolly.
I'd like to get some of you guys on board. If you have anybody from
What do you like about it the best? Everything or what?
I thought it was interesting how it naturally formed the cave.
What
The
is it called?
stalagmites and the
Stalactites.
yeah, those are cool.
Did we get any exercise?
Oh my gosh. Legs,
I
yes.
think we got exercise, don't you
It
think?
was like a mile of stairs.
Yes.
The archaeological record of the Santa Cruz River, just west of the Jewish History Museum, shows Tucson to be one of the oldest sites of continuous habitation in the United States. The indigenous Hohokam and their descendants, known as Achamel O'odham, river people, and Tohono O'odham, desert people, and their ancestors, have stewarded a vast region surrounding and including Tucson for more than 5,000 years. Pascua Yaqui communities and Apache bands have historically called the northwestern edge of the Sonoran Desert home, with numerous Pascua Yaqui groups maintaining a continuous connection to the landscape surrounding what is now Tucson. Indigenous people in the southwestern United States experienced various forms of colonization, including slave labor, forced conversion, and compulsory education in boarding schools from the arrival of Spanish colonial settlers in the 17th century through the Mexican period that followed and into the present. In 1654, the first Jews arrived in the American colonies. They were comprised of a group of 23 Portuguese-speaking Sephardi refugees who traveled north from Brazil to New Amsterdam, modern-day Manhattan. 200 years later, Ashkenazi Jews, primarily German immigrants, began arriving in southern Arizona following the U.S. conquest of the region in the Mexican-American War, which lasted from May 1846 through February 1848, and the subsequent Gadsden Purchase of 1853 to 1854. During this period, the bulk of northern Mexico was ceded to the U.S., and from that territory, most of the states of the American Southwest, California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah, as well as parts of Oklahoma, Wyoming, and Colorado, were carved out. According to an 1861 census, 34,000 of Tucson's 40,000 inhabitants were Native American, while the remaining were mostly Mexicans caught on the north side of the newly demarcated border. Early Jewish settlers in southern Arizona came seeking economic opportunity, adventure, and the possibility of a new life. Many played critical roles in the development of their respective towns. In 1880, a Russian Jewish immigrant named Jacob Isaacson built a trading post along the Arizona-Mexico border, and the U.S. Postal Service named the outpost Isaacson. The town was renamed Nogales in 1883. Several Jewish families, including the Levies, Brackers, and Capons, were central to the economic development of the city. Jewish merchants were among the founders of Douglas. They included Jacob and Ben Levy, Morris Farber, and Raphael Blumenthal, whose son Maurice composed the state song Arizona. Jewish family businesses, such as the Levy Brothers department store, flourished in the smelting town of Douglas well into the first quarter of the 20th century. The oldest Jewish cemetery in Arizona is located on the outskirts of Douglas, approximately 200 yards from the Arizona-Mexico border. Tombstone, Arizona was a silver mining town that experienced a boom in the 1880s. At that time, most of the town's Jews were merchants, including Abraham Emanuel, who served 3 terms as the mayor of Tombstone. The first Jewish congregation in the Arizona Territory began to form in Tucson in 1880, when Isidore Gotthelf arrived via Casa Grande, the last railroad stop in the West at that time. Gotthelf, along with his brothers Jake and Dave, identified local Jewish individuals and organized a group to form a congregation. The group included Samuel Drachman, Albert Steinfeld, and Alex Levin. The first service was held in the hall at Levin's Park. In 1883, Charles Moses Strauss was elected as the first Jewish mayor of Tucson. Strauss, who, along with Jacob Mansfeld, helped establish the University of Arizona, was a member of the Arizona legislature and served as the first superintendent of education. He was instrumental in the construction of a city hall and the Carnegie Free Library in Tucson, the first free public library in Arizona. In March of 1904, the Hebrew Ladies Benevolent Society was formed and served as the Sisterhood of Temple Emmanuel. The group's primary efforts were aimed at raising money for philanthropic giving. An early focus was care for Russian refugees. In 1905, the Hebrew Ladies Benevolent Society, whose members included Clara Farren Bloom and Eva Mansfeld, decided to undertake the project to build a space for worship and study and to carry on all the essential functions of an organized Jewish community. By December of 1908, more than 65 families from as far away as Globe and Nogales, representing both Jews and non-Jews, had pledged funding for the building, and on June 20, 1910, Masons from Lodge 4 Tucson laid the cornerstone of the first synagogue building in the Arizona Territory. The area in which the temple was built, now known as Barrio Viejo, was part of a collection of barrios and a commercial district. Predominantly Mexican-American, most of Tucson's African-American and Asian-American populations lived in this neighborhood, along with Jewish, Lebanese, and Syrian merchants and families. The temple building, which now houses this Jewish History Museum, opened for High Holy Day services on Erev Rosh Hashanah, October 3, 1910. It was one of only 2 synagogues in the southwestern United States, along with Temple Albert in Albuquerque, located between Temple Mount Sinai in El Paso, Texas, and Congregation Beth Israel in San Diego, California. In December of 1910, the Evergreen Cemetery Association deeded to Temple Emmanuel a burial plot known as the Jewish Burial Ground to serve the Jewish community of Tucson. On February 14, 1912, Arizona became the 48th state of the United States. In 1935, Congregation Anshe Israel, a conservative congregation, was established a few doors to the north of Temple Emmanuel at 520 North Stone. Congregation Anshe Israel moved to 1801 East 6th Street in 1946 and to its current location at the corner of 5th and Craycroft in 1969. In 1936, the Consul of Mexico in Tucson was established directly across the street from Temple Emmanuel. 5 years later, in 1941, the African Methodist Episcopal Church built the Prince Chapel Church next door to the temple building. Throughout the 1940s, this block on South Stone Avenue between 16th and 17th Street was a multicultural nexus. Also in 1941, Temple Emmanuel hired Rabbi Joseph Gumbiner to lead the congregation, following the passing of Rabbi Chaim Iola. Rabbi Gumbiner left a rich legacy for the Tucson community. During his 6-year tenure, he co-founded the Tucson Interracial Council, a group that laid the groundwork for the desegregation of local schools, cultivated multi-faith and intercultural dialogue with the AME Church, and, during the era of Jim Crow segregation, hosted a regional meeting of the Urban League in this building. His efforts to advance civil rights inspires the work of this museum today. Following Rabbi Gumbiner's departure for California in 1947, Rabbi Albert Bill Gray became the head rabbi of Temple Emmanuel and stewarded the congregation during a period of growth and transition while continuing to advance the civil rights efforts spearheaded by his predecessor. A final Temple Emmanuel service was held at 564 South Stone on September 16, 1949. Services commenced in the new Temple Emmanuel building 1 week later, with a processional of Torahs into the sanctuary on Erev Rosh Hashanah. After the departure of Temple Emmanuel, several churches housed their congregations in this building. Tucson's Jewish community grew exponentially during the second half of the 20th century. Along with the growth of the population, a vibrant organizational infrastructure was developed to serve the community. In the 1980s, the building was vacant and fell into disrepair. Plans were undertaken to raise the building. The organized Jewish community recognized the historical significance and initiated efforts to rescue and then restore the structure. Various Jewish congregations, notably Congregation Or Chadash and Congregation Havarim, began to use the building for services and life cycle events. In 1993, the building was renamed the Stone Avenue Temple Project. The project merged with the Jewish Historical Society to become the Jewish Heritage Center in 2004, and in 2008, the Heritage Center evolved into the Jewish History Museum.
place where we'd like to stop and look around. We'll continue for a while here. You can put it down there too if you want. Okay. We'll stop and get out for a moment. So we were at a stop. We were taking pictures, and I got close to a cactus, and I was plucked in multiple places through my jeans, and I had to drop my pants to pull out the needles. Wow. What have you picked up, Carol, on this so far?
That this cactus grows very tall and very old, and it's amazing. And also that the woodpecker actually makes a nest inside these cactus.
Wow.
That one must be 100 or so.
Oh, look at this right up against the tree.
Yes.
It always looks like a hand coming out of the cactus right there. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, look at, whoa, we find coyotes. Are they coyotes? Yeah. Coyotes, oh my God. Let's see if we could see them. Yeah, oh no, we got them. I know we got a video of them, right? Ann?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That was cool.
It's hard to see the road coming up on these hills.
Sure.
did it.
Good.